Morning, welcome to the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Today is Wednesday, June 26, 2019. I am MD. This is segment 1 of the program, in which we will continue the reading of the Mueller report. But before, we will provide you some context into what this is about. Also today, there are a few other relevant information that may be of some importance to you. We will take a quick look at those events as well. Give us 60 seconds, we will give you the world. Live from New York City, at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the fourth branch presents discussions, debates, commentary on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense. Welcome once again. If you join us for the first time, welcome to the fourth branch program. If you've been here before, thank you for your contribution. You make this journey possible. The fourth branch program is not associated with any political party. Our ultimate objective is to perfect the union. But there is one major obstacle which might prevent that. In fact, that has prevented that from happening. It's ignorance. Yesterday, we decided to give you kind of an idea as to how we acquire ignorance and how to get rid of ignorance. We provided some information to show that we were all born ignorant. Yes, as members of the human species, we were not born with knowledge. We acquire knowledge along the way. We learn to speak, we learn to say words, We educate ourselves about things of life, things that matter, things that we're interested in. Ironically, as we accumulating this type of knowledge, becoming less and less ignorant of life-related matters, some, actually many, have been going backwards. Sometimes not to no fault of theirs, but nevertheless. So there is the ignorance we acquire because we member of the human species. We were born that way. But we know it's not a good thing. That's why we do everything to shed it. And even when there are circumstances we cannot, we hide it. No one goes to that extreme just to hide something that's good, and we know that's not the case. We know that doesn't happen. We are more inclined to hide what's bad, what we perceive as bad, and we try to expose, to put on display what we think are good, what we conceive as good. As such, there is no argument that ignorance is bad. JFK said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. That's how dangerous ignorance is. Now, there are many who have decided to stay and live in ignorance. That baffles the mind as to why. But they have. They reject the truth, they reject facts, they argue against it, and they live their lives as if that's just fine. Now, in a world where somebody's ignorance would not impact or affect others, then there would be nothing to do, or it would be irrelevant to even try to do something about it. But unfortunately, we are all embarked in the same boat, and the ignorance of one individual put all of our lives in jeopardy. As such, we cannot just ignore it. You cannot just shrug it off and just move on, because sooner or later we will pay the price of the individual who is ignorant. The neighbor next door, the family member, no matter who it is. In fact, the individual who lives across the world, from across the continent, that individual ignorance may not impact you immediately, but will. Take, for instance, Adolf Hitler. Need I say more? Today, as I mentioned, we will continue the reading of the Mueller report. There are a couple of items that are obviously making news, and this is the first one. Did we load it? Well, we'll take a look at it in a short little while, but there are a few items that are making news. We do have today, which is June 26th, that's the first Democratic debate. In fact, part one, I should say, because there are going to be two, today and tomorrow. There are 10 candidates who are going to be on the stage arguing their case as to why you should pick him or her as the individual to become the next president of the United States. And again, tomorrow, you'll have the opportunity to watch 10 more candidates again arguing their case as to why you should pick any one of them to become the next president of the United States. One thing is certain, since the start of the Trump presidency, we have seen what the country has gone through what it never gone before. In fact, the very advent of Donald Trump presidency has thrown the country into a predicament which would provide the legislators the opportunity to revise our Constitution. If there has ever been a time to do so, that is the time. And the reason is because for 200 plus years, every individual who had vied for the office of the presidency had abided by the rules, by the guidelines, by the norms. And we never thought that there was any problem. Now, not that we know the Constitution was perfect. Well, it was created, crafted by man. But for the most part, we rely pretty much on the Constitution to take care of matters of government, and we sometimes angry, frustrated. We blame the other side for everything that goes wrong when the other side is on the driver's seat, and when we change driver, then the other side now blame the side that's on the driver's seat. So it's a constant, endless back and forth. But for the most part, we have been okay. Now, for those who believe that what's going on is okay, as I mentioned many times, I can categorically say that those individuals are no patriot. And I don't say that for the sake of saying it, and I've been providing a basis for that statement. You see, a patriot is an individual who would sacrifice sometimes his or her own life in order to protect what's important, in order to protect what's valuable, in order to protect the greater number, the greater good. The Constitution of the United States is what makes the United States the envy of the world. Now, many people may think it's because the United States has a pile of weapons. You see, might scares people, but does not provide any respect for any individual, because you may be afraid of an individual because you believe that an individual can beat you, but that doesn't make it that you respect the person, because circumstances will change, things will change, and there may be a time that will come when that individual may no longer be able to beat you, at which point it will become pretty clear that you never had any respect for that individual. And I can say with a high degree of certainty that our Constitution, the Constitution of the United States, the form of government that we have had for 200 plus years, is the reason that many countries in the world, people around the world, have tried to emulate the United States of America. Again, it's not because of the pile of weapons that we have. Russia has that, China has that today. It's a race for countries to become the one that has the most weapons. But the world doesn't respect Russia because Russia can bomb them and eradicates them from the face of the planet. Nor do they have respect for China for inching its way into becoming what you would call a superpower, if we cannot call it that yet. So it is not the pile of weapons that we have, rather the form of government that we have that has made the United States the envy of the world. Maybe it doesn't matter to most of those individuals. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they think that the United States can be by itself, living as an island. A lot of countries have used the template that we have here. But as we see the past 2 years, it wasn't just Donald Trump destroying the fabric of our society, removing all the guardrail for our democracy. But it is also because he had enlisted the help of foreign entity, America's #1 enemy, to do that. And those are not speculation for those who keep thinking, well, that didn't happen. Robert Mueller said no collusion, no collusion. Echoing what the president says when everything points to the contrary. Now, you didn't need Robert Mueller to tell you that Donald Trump was in bed with Russia. You don't need Robert Mueller for that. Anyone who is unable, and let me repeat that, anyone who is unable to come to that conclusion has a serious problem. Logic, that is, a serious logic problem. Robert Mueller is not needed to come to that conclusion. The proof is right there. We've seen it. Donald Trump has put that in display almost on a regular basis. So the need for a Robert Mueller report in order to come to that conclusion was absolutely unnecessary. And yet, millions of people kept echoing a falsehood it's mind-boggling to think that there are millions of people who still are deprived of this very important differentiator between us, human species, and animals. We're able to use logic, and I don't mean rationale to justify whatever bad, evil that one is doing, but logic. No one can argue with logic. Well, you can, but you look pretty dumb, pretty stupid to do so. In the existence of our nation, there has not been a single time until Donald Trump that an individual who had vied for the Oval Office and decided to enlist the help of foreign entity, even much worse, the #1 enemy of our country, Russia. Now, it is one thing that you have one individual who couldn't care less about the country, who is not patriot, but it's a whole different ballgame when you have a whole political party, including legislators, completely abandoning patriotism in order to support a political party that's destroying the foundation of the republic. Those are the people who represent individuals in various states. It is a play because it's one thing that you have, constituents who are gullible, naive, ignorant, But it is a whole different ballgame when you have those very individual tasks to pass legislation, to enact policies. And those individuals are either unpatriotic, ignorant, or simply could not care less. The rationale falls on receiving welcoming ears because the constituent seems to be okay with it. Now, the saddest part of the problem that the country is going through is the fact that you have constituents trying to justify that individual sitting in the Oval Office who had collaborated with the country number one enemy as okay. Now you have legislators who are making all kind of argument in order to justify that as well. The argument that the legislators are advancing, Republican legislators that is that investigation wasn't supposed to happen. It was, well, a coup, as they kept saying. Ignorance is very dangerous. And we have that playing out in front of us. And when we say ignorance, it doesn't mean those individuals didn't go to school. Some of them have a bachelor's degree, master's degree, even PhD. And yet those individuals cannot see through that those legislators, they are crook and scoundrel, only interested in keeping their job. And as such, they are willing to say and do anything to make that happen. In other words, we have very selfish Republican legislators who are willing to do anything as long as that translates into them keeping their job, even if it damifies their constituent. They don't care about that. I mentioned to you yesterday that Fox makes its money, has become the largest network in the nation and has kept the number one spot. Not because Fox is such a great news organization. We all know that Fox is not a news organization. Yes, it's called Fox News, but it's not any surprise to anyone living right here in the United States that this is not the case. And yet, it is considered, in terms of viewership, the largest network in the nation. And the reason is because, well, its audience like being lied to. And they continue doing that because, well, it brings them money. So to the detriment of generations of people, you have a network whose primary job would have been to educate its audience, but rather decide to deceive the audience because, well, it brings money. Which brings me to the reason that a lot of people think Donald Trump is doing such a great job. The economy is great. The unemployment is low. So, well, we just like that. What good would all that do if you were to lose your soul, say the Bible? And ironically, a lot of those who claim to be Christian are making the exact same argument as well. Money is all that matters. And I asked one of my fellow Republicans, then what happened when Donald Trump leaves? Gee, we're going to have to close the United States of America because we don't have Donald Trump to save us. Gosh,
we are in big trouble, because that's the argument that's being made today, that Donald Trump is such great. He's the only one who can do what's going on in the country. He waves his wand and suddenly everything falls in place. The economy is great, unemployment is low. Well, gee, we cannot get rid of Donald Trump because he is too good for the country. He can die tomorrow, Then what would happen? The country will go to hell? Logic is a very important aspect of the human species. Anyone who is deprived of such is in serious trouble. And so far, the Republicans have proven, the Republican constituents have proven to have really very little of that. Now, to some, it's no fault of theirs, because they are being bombarded by falsehood, by leaders who want to deceive them because it benefits them. Whether it's political leaders or business leaders, it brings money to their pockets. So, Republican can stay as dumb as possible because that benefits those people. As I mentioned earlier, I could have cared less if the ignorance of my neighbor, my fellow Republican neighbor next door, or my fellow Republican that I meet on the street at the supermarket, if his or her ignorance would not impact my life, then I would say, well, you can stay as ignorant as you want to be for as long as you are alive. But it so happened that the ignorance of one individual impairs the security of us all. So it's not a clear cut that we shrug it off, we don't do anything about it, and then everything is fine. No, everything is not fine. The United States of America is a large boat, and the ignorance of one individual can sink that boat. And so far, we witnessing one individual, the captain of that boat, really wrecking that boat, and you have millions of others joining him to help make the process much more effective, destroying it. And they have all kind of rationale. Now the legislature are saying that it doesn't matter what wrongdoing Donald Trump has done. The investigation wasn't supposed to happen. Now, notwithstanding the fact that this is one of the most ridiculous things that any legislator could say, because the very purpose of our agencies are to investigate, are to protect our national security. So if they see something that's not right, that's their duty. Otherwise, what's the point of their existence? Now, notwithstanding that, now you have legislators, Republican legislators, who are making the argument, well, because the investigation started on the wrong premise, then no matter what wrongdoing, what evil we found, well, that was found, it doesn't matter because that was the wrong premise. That's the legislator, the individual that the Republican elected to make decision for them. That's their argument. It is mind-boggling because one expects legislators to have really a little bit more brain, more thinking power than their constituent. So the argument they're making is, if a police officer were to be called to, let's just say, for noise in a neighborhood at a particular house, and when the officer investigate and find no noise, if the officer were to find crime ongoing and arrest the individual or individuals involved in the crime, their defense would be, you arrested me on the wrong premise because, well, my neighbor called for noise. There was no noise. In fact, my neighbor knew there was no noise. So that was the wrong premise. So no matter which crime you find, you cannot do anything about it. That's your Republican legislators' argument today in regards to what Mueller has found. It was wrong premise. Then it shouldn't matter. Now the constituents now are advancing another theory. And both the legislators, Republican legislators and Republican constituents are already admitting that yes, a lot of wrongdoing on the part of Trump, because that's the reason, that's the rationale that they have. They're not saying that those things didn't happen. That's not the argument they're making. The legislators are making the argument that since the investigation started on wrong premise, that no matter what crime you find, you should leave it alone. Now, the constituents are saying that, well, it doesn't matter that Donald Trump committed crime because, well, you know, Democrats would have done the same thing. That's where we're at in the United States of America. You have the legislators condoning crime because, you know, the investigation started on the wrong premise. And now you have the constituent condoning crime saying, well, Democrats would have done the same thing too. Now you have a completely corrupt political party willing to destroy the fabric of our society because, well, it serves the purpose. Now, for information purpose, Democrats would not have done that. And I think I already given you plenty of such example. In 3 separate occasions, 3 Democrat candidates, and by 3 Democrats, I don't mean for the same election. In 3 separate occasions, 3 separate election, presidential election, Russia, the same country that approached Donald Trump, that Donald Trump opened the door for them to help, that same country, Russia, approached 3 Democrat presidential candidates in the past. All 3 times, the candidates say, thanks, but no thanks. No Democrat would not have done the same thing. You're gravely mistaken. Democrats are patriots. They don't take a bullhorn saying that. They don't repeat that in every instance, every occasion that they have, but their actions say they are patriots. So no Republican, my fellow Republican Democrat would not have done that. But that's the political party. That's the Republican political party. Legislators, crime is okay because we weren't supposed to find out about it because the investigation wasn't supposed to happen. That's the rationale. People like Jim Jordan, like Meadow, Lindsey Graham, they're all thinking, oh, that's fine. You know, who cares? Donald Trump slept with Russia. Who cares? Donald Trump enlisted Russia to help with the election. Doesn't matter. Oh, he's doing a great job. So why does it matter? Now, the Republican constituent, you would think, would have a good sense to say, no, that's not acceptable. Our democracy is in serious jeopardy by having the individual sitting in the Oval Office really having collaboration with a foreign entity. No, that's not what they say. They say, that's fine. Democrats would have done that too. That's the Republican Party today. But they're patriot as long as they can sleep with the enemy. That's patriotism to them. I keep saying that being American does not equate to being patriot. So I had a few of my fellow Republicans during conversation saying, I was born right here in the United States of America. My parents were born right here. My grandparents were born right here. Well, you are American, all right, but you're no patriot. If you are a patriot, you cannot not be outraged. Because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican. Because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point, the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve the democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. We have a piece of news in regards to the Mueller report. We will continue the reading in just a second. First, the Judiciary Committee in Congress finally came to an agreement with Mueller, and according to the latest news, that on July 17, 2019, Mueller will show up and testify publicly about the report that he put out. So on July 17, 2019, we know that the world will be watching. No doubt that Donald Trump himself will drop everything to watch what Mueller has to say. Earlier I mentioned that three presidential candidate Democrat rejected the help from Russia. Now, I'm not just providing that information as if there is no way of verifying that. If you head to the peoplebranch.org, you will find an article which I published a few weeks ago, which provide all the necessary information, detail, dates, the candidates in question as to when those advances from Russia happened and what they said. So those are not just stories that being told, and there is no way to justify that. So 3 times, 3 separate candidates in 3 separate occasions were also approached by Russia, and they were all Democrats, and they were all said no. The first time that Russia tried a Republican candidate, they say, welcome, we would love it. The next paragraph in the Mueller report is Erik Prince and Kirill Dmitriev meet in the Seychelles. George Nader and Erik Prince arranged Seychelles meeting with Dmitriev. Nader traveled to New York in early January 2017 and had lunchtime and dinner meeting with Erik Prince on January 3, 2017. Nader and Prince discussed Dmitriev. Nader informed Prince that the Russians were looking to build a link with the incoming Trump administration. Next couple of words, redacted grand jury. He told Prince that Dmitriev had been pushing Nader to introduce him to someone from the incoming administration. The paragraph, the sentence that follows that has been redacted grand jury. Nader suggested, in light of Prince's relationship with transition team official, that Prince and Dmitriev meet to discuss issues of mutual concern. The next sentence has been redacted grand jury. Prince told Nader that he needed to think further about it and to check with transition team officials. After his dinner with Prince, Nader sent Prince a link to a Wikipedia entry about Dmitriev and sent Dmitriev a message stating that he had just met, quote, with some key people within the family and inner circle, end of quote, a reference to Prince, and that he had spoken at length and positively about Dmitriev. Nader told Dmitriev that the people he met had asked for Dmitriev's bio, and Dmitriev replied that he would update and send it. Nader later received from Dmitriev 2 files concerning Dmitriev. One was a 2-page biography, and the other was a list of Dmitriev's positive quotes about Donald Trump. The next morning, Nader forwarded the message and attachment Dmitriev had sent him to Prince. Nader wrote to Prince that these documents were the version, quote, to be used with some additional detail for them, end of quote, with, quote, them referring to members of the incoming administration. Prince opened the attachment at Trump Tower within an hour of receiving them. Prince stated that while he was at Trump Tower that day, he spoke with Kellyanne Conway, Wilbur Ross, Steve Mnuchin, and others while waiting to see Bannon. Cell site location data for Prince's mobile phone indicate that Prince remained at Trump Tower for approximately 3 hours. Prince said that he could not recall whether during those 3 hours he met with Bannon and discussed Dmitriev with him. The next sentence has been redacted grand jury. Prince booked a ticket to the Seychelles on January 7, 2017. The following day, Nader wrote to Dmitry that he had a, quote, pleasant surprise, end of quote, for him, namely that he had arranged for Dmitry to meet, quote, a special guest, end of quote, from, quote, the new team, end of quote, referring to Prince. Nader asked Dmitry if he could come to the Seychelles for the meeting on January 12, 2017, and Dmitry agreed. The following day, Dmitry sought assurance from Nader that the Seychelles meeting would be worthwhile. A couple of words after that have been redacted grand jury. Dmitry was not enthusiastic about the idea of meeting with Prince, and that Nader assured him that Prince wielded influence with the incoming administration. Nader wrote to Dmitry, quote, this guy, Prince, is designated by Steve Bannon to meet you. I know him and he is very well connected and trusted by the new team. His sister is now a minister of education, end of quote. According to Nader, Prince had led him to believe that Bannon was aware of Prince's upcoming meeting with Dmitry, and Prince acknowledged that it was fair for Nader to think that Prince would pass information on to the transition team. Bannon, however, told the office that Prince did not tell him in advance about his meeting with Dmitry. The Seychelles meeting. Dmitry arrived with his wife in the Seychelles on January 11, 2017, and checked into the Four Seasons resort where Crown Prince Mohammed and Nader were staying. Prince arrived that same day. Prince and Dmitry met for the first time that afternoon in Nader's villa, with Nader present. The initial meeting lasted approximately 30 to 45 minutes. In the next paragraph, the first two sentences have been redacted grand jury. Prince described the 8 years of the Obama administration in negative terms and stated that he was looking forward to a new era of cooperation and conflict resolution. According to Prince, he told Dmitry that Bannon was effective if not conventional, and that Prince provided policy papers to Bannon. The next paragraph has been redacted grand jury. The only part in the next paragraph that's visible is the following: the topic of Russian interference in the 2016 election did not come up. In the following paragraph, the first couple of sentences have been redacted grand jury, and the last few sentences have been redacted grand jury. Just one sentence was not redacted, and it reads as follows. Prince added that he would inform Bannon about his meeting with Dmitry, and that if there was interest in continuing the discussion, Bannon or someone else on the transition team would do so. Afterwards, Prince returned to his room, where he learned that a Russian aircraft carrier has sailed to Libya, which led him to call Nader and ask him to set up another meeting with Dmitry. According to Nader, Prince called and said he had checked with his associate back home and needed to convey to Dmitry that Libya was, quote, off the table, end of quote. Nader wrote to Dmitry that Prince had, quote, received an urgent message that he needs to convey to you immediately, end of quote, and arranged for himself, Dmitry and Prince to meet at a restaurant on the Four Seasons property. At the second meeting, Prince told Dmitry that the United States could not accept any Russian involvement in Libya because it would make the situation there much worse. After the brief second meeting concluded, Nader and Dmitriev discussed what had transpired. Dmitriev told Nader that he was disappointed in his meeting with Prince for two reasons. One, he believed the Russian needed to be communicating with someone who had more authority within the incoming administration than Prince had. Second, he had hoped to have a discussion of greater substance, such as outlining a strategic roadmap for both countries to follow. Dmitriev told Nader that next words have been redacted grand jury. Prince's comments next few words have been redacted grand jury were insulting, and followed by redaction grand jury. Hours after the second meeting, Prince sent two messages to Bannon from the Seychelles. As described further below, investigators were unable to obtain the content of these or other messages between Prince and Bannon, and the investigation also did not identify evidence of any further communication between Prince and Dmitriev after their meeting in the Seychelles. Eric Prince meeting with Steve Bannon after the Seychelles trip. After the Seychelles meeting, Prince told Nader that he would inform Bannon about his discussion with Dmitriev and would convey that someone within the Russian power structure was interested in seeking better relations with the incoming administration. On January 12, 2017, Prince contacted Bannon's personal assistant to set up a meeting for the following week. Several days later, Prince messaged her against asking about Bannon's schedule. Prince said that he met Bannon at Bannon's home after returning to the United States in mid-January and briefed him about several topics, including his meeting with Dmitriev. Prince told the office that he explained to Bannon that Dmitriev was the head of a Russian sovereign wealth fund and was interested in improving relations between the United States and Russia. Prince had on his cell phone a screenshot of Dmitriev's Wikipedia page dated January 16, 2017, and Prince told the office that he likely showed that image to Bannon. Prince also believed he provided Bannon with Dmitriev's contact information. According to Prince, Bannon instructed Prince not to follow up with Dmitriev, and Prince had the impression that the issue was not a priority for Bannon. Prince related that Bannon did not appear angry, just relatively uninterested. Bannon, by contrast, told the office that he never discussed with Prince anything regarding Dmitriev or DIF or any meeting with Russian individuals or people associated with Putin. Bannon also stated that had Prince mentioned such a meeting, Bannon would have remembered it, and Bannon would have objected to such a meeting having taken place. The conflicting accounts provided by Bannon and Prince could not be independently clarified by reviewing their communication because neither one was able to produce any of the messages they exchanged in the time period surrounding the Seychelles meeting. Prince's phone contained no text messages prior to March 2017, though provider records indicate that he and Bannon exchanged dozens of messages. Prince denied deleting any messages but claimed he did not know why there were no messages on his device before March 2017. Bannon devices similarly contain no messages in the relevant time period, and Bannon also stated that he did not know why messages did not appear on his device. Miracle, I suppose. Bannon told the office that during both the month before and after the Seychelles meeting, he regularly used his personal BlackBerry and personal email for work-related communication, including those with friends, and he took no step to preserve these work communication. Kirill Dmitriev post-election contact with Rick Gerson regarding U.S.-Russia relations. Dmitriev contacts during the transition period were not limited to those facilitated by NATO. In approximately late November 2016, the United Arab Emirates (UAE) National Security Advisor introduced Dmitriev to Rick Gerson, a friend of Jared Kushner, who runs a hedge fund in New York. Gerson stated he had no formal role in the transition and had no involvement in the Trump campaign other than occasional casual discussions about the campaign with Kushner. After the election, Gerson assisted the transition by arranging meetings for transition officials with former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and a UAE delegation led by Crown Prince Mohammed. When Dmitriev and Gerson met, they principally discussed potential joint ventures between Gerson's hedge fund and RDIF. Dmitriev was interested in improved economic cooperation between the United States and Russia and asked Gerson who he should meet with in the incoming administration who would be helpful towards his goal. Gerson replied that he would try to figure out the best way to arrange appropriate introduction, but noted that confidentiality would be required because of the sensitivity of holding such meeting before the new administration took power and before cabinet nominees had been confirmed by the Senate. Gerson said he would ask Kushner and Michael Flynn who the quote key person or people end of quote were on the topics of reconciliation with Russia, joint security concern, and economic matters. Dmitriev told Gerson that he had been asked by Putin to develop and execute a reconciliation plan between the United States and Russia. He noted in a text message to Gerson that if Russia was, quote, approached with respect and willingness to understand our position, we can have major breakthrough quickly, end of quote. Gerson and Dmitriev exchanged ideas in December 2016 about what such a reconciliation plan would include. Gerson told the office that the transition team had not asked him to engage in this discussion with Dmitriev and that he did so on his own initiative and as a private citizen. On January 9, 2019, the same day he asked Nader whether meeting friends would be worthwhile, Dmitriev sent his biography to Gerson and asked him if he could, quote, share it with Jared or somebody else very senior in the team so that they know that we are focused from our side on improving the relationship and my boss asked me to play a key role in that, end of quote. Dmitriev also asked Gerson if he knew France and if France was somebody important or worth spending time with. After his trip to the Seychelles, Dmitriev told Gerson that Bannon had asked France to meet with Dmitriev and that the two had had a positive meeting. On January 16, 2017, Dmitriev consolidated the idea for U.S.-Russia reconciliation that he and Gerson had been discussing into a two-page document that listed 5 main points. 1. Jointly fighting terrorism. 2. Jointly engaging in anti-weapons of mass destruction efforts. 3. Developing win-win economic and investment initiative. 4. Maintaining an honest, open, and continual dialogue regarding issues of disagreement. And 5. Ensuring proper communication and trust by key people from each country. On January 18, 2017, Gerson gave a copy of the document to Kushner. Kushner had not heard of Dmitriev at that time. Gerson explained that Dmitriev was the head of RDIF, and Gerson may have alluded to Dmitriev being well connected. Kushner placed the document in a file and said it would get to the right people. Kushner ultimately gave one copy of the document to Bannon and another to Rex Tillerson. According to Kushner, neither of them followed up with Kushner about it. On January 19, 2017, Dmitriev sent Nader a copy of the two-page document telling him that this was, quote, a view from our side that I discussed in my meeting on the island and with you and with our friends. Please share with them. We believe this is a good foundation to start from, end of quote. Gerson informed Dmitriev that he had given the document to Kushner soon after delivering it. On January 26, 2017, Dmitriev wrote to Gerson that his, quote, boss, end of quote, an apparent reference to Putin, was asking if there had been a feedback on the proposal. Dmitriev said, quote, we do not want to rush things and move at a comfortable speed. At the same time, my boss asked me to try to have the key U.S. meeting in the next 2 weeks if possible, end of quote. He informed Gerson that Putin and President Trump would speak by phone that Saturday and noted that that information was, quote, very confidential. The same day, Dmitriev wrote to Nader that he had sent his, quote, boss, and quote, again yesterday, who had, quote, emphasized that this is a great priority for us and that we need to build this communication channel to avoid bureaucracy, end of quote. On January 28, 2017, Dmitriev texted Nader that he wanted, quote, to see if I can confirm to my boss that your friends may use some of the ideas from two-pager I sent you in the telephone call that will happen at 12 EST, end of quote. An apparent reference to the call scheduled between President Trump and Putin. Nader replied, quote, definitely paper was so submitted to Tim by Rick and me. They took it seriously, end of quote. After the call between President Trump and Putin occurred, Dmitriev wrote to Nader that, quote, the call went very well. My boss wants me to continue making some public statement that us-Russia cooperation is good and important, end of quote. Gerson also wrote to Dmitriev to say that the call had gone well, and Dmitriev replied that the document they had drafted together, quote, played an important role, end of quote. I don't know if you're following, but what that means is Russia is dictating policy to US. Gerson and Dmitriev appeared to stop communicating with one another in approximately March 2017, when the investment deal they had been working on together showed no sign of progressing. You are obviously on the Fourth French program, the place for common sense. patriot. You cannot not be outraged, because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican, because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point, the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who makes sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve the democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. I invite you to join me again tomorrow at 10 a.m., during which time we will continue with the reading of the Mueller report. The good news is we're almost done with volume 1. We have probably less than 40 pages left in volume 1. And we will begin as soon as we're done with volume 1 with volume 2. I hope this exercise, as you can see now, there are other other venues that are doing exactly the same thing by reading the Mueller report, because we understand that people don't have time to read we're talking about 500 pages of report, almost 500 for volume 1, again almost that many pages for volume 2. That's a lot of pages to go through. In fact, as of our talking, some members in Washington, legislators, have not even read the report. And that's not something that I'm saying. It's members of the legislative body that have gone on record on television saying that there are a lot of members, especially in the Republican side, who simply do not even care to read the report. And those are the people that are telling you things that they just take from a hat and tell their Republican constituent about what's going on without even spending the time to read the report. Those are the people who are representing you. Now, if you did not find anything that of importance to you in all that was said, then you know exactly what to do. Send us your comment, your suggestion, your criticism, so that we can improve it. Because as I said before, and I'll repeat it again, this program is not going anywhere. So you might as well help make it better. If you have a topic you would like us to talk about, whatever the topic is, let us know. We will research the topic and we will discuss it right here on the Fourth Branch program. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon or evening, whichever that happened to be. Hopefully you can join us again tomorrow, right here on the Fourth Branch. My name is Mike Duchesne. Have a wonderful day. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, The Place for Common Sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time.